tying in the issue of a corrupt campaign finance system with a rigged economy. Other example. Today in America, we pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Now, prescription drugs is a big deal because you go to the doctor, doctor's going to write you out a script. 1 out of 5 Americans cannot afford to fill the prescriptions their doctors prescribe. Many elderly people are cutting their pills in half because they don't have the money to buy the prescription drugs they need. Pharmaceutical industry has 1,300 lobbyists in Washington, D.C., and they spend hundreds of millions of dollars on lobbying and campaign contributions. And the result of that is that you pay, by far, the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. And tomorrow, if you have some kind of chronic illness, and you walk into the pharmacy tomorrow and the price is double, there is nothing that anybody can do about it. They can double, triple the price of the medicine you pay. That is what a corrupt campaign finance system is about, translating into policies regarding the pharmaceutical industry. Give you another example. This maybe is the most significant one of all. Everybody here knows that about 8 years ago, as a result of the greed and the recklessness and the illegal behavior on Wall Street, this country was plunged into the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. Everybody here knows that. Millions of people lost their homes, their jobs, their life savings. Okay, that's what happened. Wall Street, which spent billions of dollars to get deregulated. When I was representing Vermont in the House, I was on the banking committee. I saw it. They spent billions of dollars to say, we want to get the government off our backs. Let's have investor banks merge with commercial banks, merge with big insurance companies. Let's do away with this Glass-Steagall legislation. That's what they wanted, and that is what they got. They spent billions of dollars in lobbying and campaign contributions to get it. Well, 8 years came and went, and it turned out that after they got the government off of their backs, it turned out that their operations were basically fraudulent, that they were selling subprime mortgage packages that were worthless, and Wall Street teetered on the edge of collapse, and you and your parents bailed them out. Okay? Now, I want to tell you a story, if I might, which kind of brings together what a corrupt campaign finance system and a rigged economy and a broken criminal justice system is all about. This is tough stuff, and this is part of why the American people are angry and demoralized with the political process. But again, somebody said it, the truth shall make us free. We got to put this stuff out on the table, and we got to deal with it. So here's the story, all right? Here's the story, and if you think I'm not telling you the truth, check it out. A couple of weeks ago, a financial institution called Goldman Sachs, one of the largest on Wall Street, reached a settlement with the United States government for $5 billion. Got it? $5 billion. That's a B. It's a lot of money. Other banks had reached similar settlements for even more. Why did Goldman Sachs reach a settlement with the federal government? Well, they reached a settlement because they were selling worthless packages of subprime mortgages, and they were ripping off and defrauding investors. Okay, that's the way it is, $5 billion. That's number one. Now let's talk about political power. Let's talk about your political power and Wall Street's political power. What Goldman Sachs has been able to do over the last 25 years, and they're not alone in this, is to send to Washington, D.C., 2 people who became secretaries of the Treasury. You got it? From what is called the revolving door. You go from Wall Street to Washington, back to Wall Street, and when you're in government, you do the bidding of Wall Street. 2 people, one under a Democratic administration, one under a Republican administration. And Dozens and dozens of other high-ranking government officials come from this one financial institution, Goldman Sachs. That's called political power. Third point, Goldman Sachs, along with other Wall Street firms, provides huge amounts of campaign contributions to people that they like. They do things called bundling. You know what bundling means? Bundling means that people come together and they make out, executives in a company make out the maximum amount they can. And now with super PACs, they can go further than that. Okay? They can spend millions and millions and millions of dollars on a given candidate. That's political power. Now, what about a broken criminal justice system? Some kid in New Hampshire or Vermont today gets picked up with marijuana. That kid will have a police record for the rest of his life. Okay? That's another story we'll get to in a minute. Okay? But when you have a police record and you go out looking for a job, you know what? Your prospective employer is going to say, well, tell me about your past. Ever been arrested? Well, yeah, I was arrested. It was a small thing. Had some marijuana. Okay, thank you. The job may go to somebody else. Not a small thing. And by the way, when you look at it from a racial perspective, understand this, when we talk about marijuana, that blacks and whites do marijuana at about the same rate. 4 times as many blacks get arrested for marijuana as whites. Okay, push that aside for the moment. All right. Goldman Sachs reaches a settlement with the government for $5 billion. Obviously, you're all interested to know how many of the executives in that company have been prosecuted and now have a police record, right? Because you know that it doesn't make any sense that a kid with marijuana has a police record, but an executive who was part of a process which destroyed the American economy, resulting in millions of people losing their jobs, their homes, and their life savings. Obviously, some of those executives will have a police record, right? Wrong. Doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. $5 billion settlement, no police record. Now, what that tells you is that we have a broken criminal justice system. We have a situation where large banks are not only too big to fail, and you got to bail them out. Now, if your mom or your pop owns a small business, makes some mistakes, or the economy goes bad, you know what? Your mom and dad's going to go out of business. But on Wall Street, the banks were too big to fail. The government couldn't allow them to go under. They were bailed out. So you have a situation where not only are the big banks too big to fail, the big-time bankers are too big to jail. And that is and I think that is one of the reasons why the American people get demoralized. Look, justice is justice. You break the law, you pay a price. An executive on Wall Street breaks the law, he pays a price. And we together are going to create a criminal justice system which provides justice, equal justice for all. Now, let me also tell you something that no other candidate will tell you, because it is also a painful truth. It's one we don't want to hear. We can live in an illusory world, or we can deal with reality. Here's the reality. No president of the United States, not Bernie Sanders or anybody else, can alone deal with the major crises facing our country. And the reason for that, as I've just indicated, is that the powers of Wall Street, and you have to understand, Wall Street has an endless supply of money. Endless. Power of Wall Street, the power of corporate America, the power of the corporate media, the power of large campaign donors are so great that the only way we transform America is how? How do we do it? Together. That's exactly right. So they have the money, they have the power, but we have something that they don't have. And by the way, that's what's been happening in this campaign. The establishment is really shocked that suddenly people are becoming mobilized. And here is the point, and what I call a political revolution. And that is that the only way we deal with the problems is when millions of people, including people who have given up on the political process, young people who have never been involved in the political process, when people come together and demand that we have a government that represents all of us and not just a handful of wealthy campaign contributors, when we do that, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish. Let me get back to the analogy I began with. We are not going to win when the other side has 10 basketball players on the court and we have 5. We're going to have a good shot to win when it's 5 versus 5, and that's what this fight is about. So, now, when we talk about why the economy is doing well, a lot of it, when we talk about why this campaign is doing well, a lot of it has to do with the fact that we are telling people about the reality that they are experiencing. Let me just go over some of the issues that we're talking about. Today in America, we have more income and wealth inequality than in any time since 1928. Okay? All of you know that we've seen an explosion of technology, that all of you and every worker in America is much more productive than he or she was years ago. And yet what we see today is the people on top doing phenomenally well while the middle class continues to decline. Now I want you to think about this and tell me what you think. In America today, the top 1/10 of 1%, you got it, not 1%, 1/10 of 1% now owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. Today, and what you have seen over the last 30 years is a massive redistribution of wealth from the middle class to the top 1/10 of 1%. Trillions of dollars. Today in America, the wealthiest 20 people now own more wealth than the bottom 50% of the American people. Got that? 20 people. Today in America, one family, the Walton family, now owns more wealth than the bottom 40%. And with that, I'm taking off my jacket. It has upset me. I feel like a rock and roll star, you know. Nothing more is coming off, that's it. Okay. All right. So you got this. I want to talk, when we talk about the rigged economy, I want you to think about this as well. And one of the things this campaign is trying to do, with I think some success, is make people think outside of the box. Don't accept reality just because it's out there. Ask why. I mean, when you see somebody sleeping homeless out on the street, don't accept that as a normal. It is not normal. Okay? Now, what a rigged economy is about is what happens with Walmart and the Walton family, okay? Walton family, the wealthiest family in America, they own Walmart. Why do you think we should be, the middle class, should be subsidizing the Walton family and making the Walton family the biggest recipient of welfare in the United States of America? Do you understand what I mean by this? Okay. Here is the point about Walmart. And listen to this. Okay? What you got is that Walmart is now the largest private sector employer in America. Okay? They pay their workers wages that are very low. And many of the workers who work for Walmart now have to go on food stamps, they have to go on Medicaid, and sometimes into subsidized housing. Who pays for those food stamps and the Medicaid? You do! So on behalf of the Walton family, the wealthiest family in America, I want to thank you very, very much. I'm here to tell you they are really grateful that the middle class is helping to subsidize a multi-billion dollar family. That is what a rigged economy is about. So I say to the Walton family, the wealthiest family in America, get off of welfare, pay your workers a living wage. Question, why is it that in New Hampshire and Vermont and throughout this country, millions of people have to work 2 or 3 jobs to bring together enough income and health care to take care of their family? Why? We have seen an explosion of technology, worker productivity is up. Why is that? What's the answer? Well, the answer is obviously that wages are too low, yes? All right. $7.25 federal minimum wage, in my view, is a starvation wage. And I believe that it has to be raised to a living wage, $15 an hour over the next few years. And when we talk about equitable wages, I hope that every man in this room will stand with the women in the fight for pay equity. Talk about the economy and the role of government and all that. A report comes out every month, it just came out a couple of days ago, talking about unemployment in America. The official unemployment rate is 5% nationally. Anybody believe that? Why not? What's wrong with that number? It doesn't, that's right. It doesn't include those people who gave up looking for work, and it doesn't include those people who are working part-time, of which there are many millions, who want to work full-time. As bad, and real unemployment then becomes close to 10%. And then, on top of that, we have youth unemployment for kids who graduate high school. I asked some economists to study the issue, and this is what they said. If the kids are white, high school graduates, 17 to 20, real unemployment, 33%. Latino, 36%, African American, 51%. Now, if there's anybody in this room who thinks there is not a direct correlation between high youth unemployment and another tragedy in this country that I want you to think about, and that is that we have more people in jail than any other country on earth. How does it happen that in America, we have more people in jail than China, an authoritarian communist country 4 times our size? How does that happen? Why does it happen? Well, there are a lot of reasons for it. But certainly if we have millions of young people out there who don't have jobs, who are not in school, who are hanging out on street corners, bad things happen. So you guys ready for a radical idea? Okay. We are going to invest in jobs and education, not jails, not incarceration. Now, this is primary time here in New Hampshire, and you got a lot of candidates running around the state, many Republicans. And Republicans often talk about family values. Have you ever talked about family values? All right. I want everybody here to understand what they mean by family values. And sometimes I think people don't. This is exactly what they mean. What they are saying, and by the way, they'll talk about it less here in New Hampshire than they will other places. But what they are talking about when they talk about family values is that no woman in this room, in this state, or in this country should have the right to control her own body. I disagree. And when they talk about family values, what they are saying to our gay brothers and sisters is they should not have the right to get married. I disagree. When I talk about family values, I'll tell you what I talk about. I talk about ending the international disgrace of the United States being the only major country on earth that doesn't guarantee paid family and medical leave. Not only are we the only major country, there are very few poor developing countries who do not understand that, for example, when a woman has a baby, she has the right to stay home with that baby and not be forced to go back to work. There is legislation in the House and the Senate that calls for 3 months of paid family and medical leave. If I'm elected president, we will pass that legislation. Now, if a pollster were to call you up today and say, hey, young man, young woman, what's on your mind? More Americans, what's on your mind? Well, hopefully you got one or two other things on your mind, too. Thank you. What you will probably say is, I'm worried about the economy and I'm worried about jobs. I'm worried about a lot of things, but, I'm worried about, whether I will get a decent job. And the reason people say that is not just that real unemployment is close to 10%. It is that if you are 55 years of age and you go to work on Monday, what are you worried about? You're worried about your boss saying, Joe, thanks for working for me for 30 years, but you know what, I got somebody who's going to take your place at half your age and half your wages. If you are a college graduate, what are you worried about? You're worried about, first of all, getting a job commensurate with your education, yes? All right? And we're going to get to student loans in a second, because I know you're worried about that. And if you're a high school graduate, you're worried about getting any job at all. That is why I believe we need a massive federal jobs program to put our people back to work. We should be hiring teachers, not firing teachers. When you look at our infrastructure, roads, bridges, water systems, anyone paying attention to Flint, Michigan? All right, that is a total disaster, but it is not unique. You got problematic water systems all over this country, wastewater plants, a rail system that is way behind other countries. We can create 13 million jobs by rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure. Let's do it. Now let's say a word about education, okay? For America to succeed, we need the best educated workforce in the world. We used to have that workforce, we no longer do. What we do have is millions of Americans, some young, some not so young, who are really being crushed under outrageous levels of student debt. Anybody here with student debt? All right, what you got? How much? Who said 140,000? 140,000? Did you go to graduate school? Just for college. All right. I'm afraid you may win. Anybody higher than that? Okay. Here's the point. And how much? Is that graduate school? Yeah, $300,000. All right. Let's take a deep breath. And one more time, let's deal with a mind view that goes beyond the status quo. There's a young woman over there, $300,000 in debt. What were you majoring in? Law? Okay. Or maybe not. But here is the point. Why should people go into severe financial pain for the crime of trying to get an education? All right. So in other words, don't accept that reality. Basically, it is crazy. If we are serious about wanting to have a strong economy, what we want is everybody in this country who has the ability and the desire to get as much education as he or she desires, right? Last that I heard, education was a good thing, and that people should not be punished for getting an education. So we're going to do three things. Number one, we're going to give people who have high student debts, or student debt in general, the ability to refinance their debt at the lowest possible interest rates they can find. Secondly, we're going to make public colleges and universities tuition-free. Thirdly, we're going to make it easier for any American going to a private college or a public college, much, much easier to get to school, regardless of the income of your family. When we think big, and that's what this campaign is about, it is asking why people should be $180,000 in debt. Why should we have more children living in poverty than any other major country on earth? Why should we be the only major nation without paid family and medical leave? Why should we have more income and wealth inequality than any other major country on earth? Those are the questions we have to ask. Let me throw out one more to you, which also gets back to a corrupt campaign finance system. Today, the United States is the only major country on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people as a right. Do you all know that? We're the only one. A few miles north of us, in Canada, they do it. UK does it. France does it. Germany does it. Holland does it. Scandinavia does it. Every major country on earth says that all people should be covered. Now, I have been criticized for saying it, but let me repeat it again. I believe that health care is a right of all people, not a privilege. And here's the story. We have made good progress, done some really good things with the Affordable Care Act, which I helped to write, but you got 29 million people today who still have no health insurance, and you have many people in this room who have large deductibles and copayments. True? Okay. Furthermore, we end up spending substantially more per capita on health care than do the people of any other country. We spend almost 3 times more than the British, 50% more than the French, and far more than our Canadian neighbors. All right? So if we are spending so much and have so many people uninsured or underinsured, it seems to me that we should move toward a Medicare for all single-payer program. Now, the insurance companies and their lobbyists and their campaign contributors don't want to see that. The drug companies and their lobbyists and campaign contributors don't want to see it, but I believe that is what we should do. All right, let me conclude by saying this. As you all know, I hope you know, there's an election here on Tuesday. In New Hampshire, Iowa was the first caucus. New Hampshire is the first primary. The eyes of America will be on New Hampshire on Tuesday. If we can win this election, if a lot of people come out to vote and there is a high turnout, I believe we will win this election. So I urge you to please bring out your neighbors and your friends and your uncles and your aunts. Bring them all out. And if we can win here in New Hampshire, the eyes of the world will know that this country is about to move in a new direction, that we are going to take on the billionaire class and make a political revolution. Thank you all.